Welcome everyone to the Proven Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Church. I'm a music producer from Northeast Ohio. I began this weekly interview series to give you different perspectives from artists, producers, engineers, and other individuals in the music industry. In each episode, we touch on not only what has helped the person succeed, but we also touch on what has shaped them into the person that they are today. I hope you're able to gain some real proven knowledge from the show, and that it helps elevate you on your own journey to success as well. Let's get into it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 222 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Today was another part 2 episode with my good friend Giavonna. She is a producer, singer, songwriter based out of North Carolina. We had her on the show initially in 2022, and on that episode we discussed a lot about sync, doing briefs for TV and movies, and she touched on what she's been up to in that world over the last couple years, continuing to expand her network, meet with different music supervisors. She also touched on what she's been doing as an artist, releasing a couple different singles over the past year, including her single All Your Fault, in which she discusses doing different remixes for, which I thought was pretty cool. If you heard the Reese Woods episode we did earlier this year, he also touched on something similar. So that's something, if you want to repurpose your songs, you're definitely going to want to hear that. And she talked about, picking up production over the last year or so using the program BandLab, and what that's meant to her, as a songwriter, being able to incorporate that in her own music and projects as well. It's always great to catch up with Giavonna. We stay in touch on Instagram, but it's really cool to be able to have a real discussion with her. And it was cool to have her on the show once again this week. So without further ado, let's get into this one. So welcome everyone to episode 222 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Today we have another part 2 episode. She was on back in, I think it's September of 2022, so it's been a couple years at this point. Songwriter, producer, does a lot of cool things, North Carolina based. Giavonna, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here, and like I said, you were on the show in 2022, so it's been a while. But happy to have you back. And for those that might not have heard that episode, just kind of give a reintroduction, like who you are, how long have you been doing it, just that basic information once again.
Okay, so I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, all that fits in that umbrella. I've been working on music since 2018. So it's been about 6 years. And I originally just started with songwriting. But then as I got more into music and stuff like that and whatnot, I started dabbling into production and actually putting out music as an artist. So it's been quite the journey.
Yeah.
And networking
Yeah.
too. I've been trying to build a community of people, and that's been quite the journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that networking is such an important part too for everyone, no matter what they're doing. And I remember the first time, that first episode, we talked a lot about sync, because you were doing a lot for sync at that time. And I'm curious as well to know, what has been like the biggest change since 2022, since we last had a discussion for you. It could be, as a songwriter, as a singer, like whatever. What has been the biggest change for you over the last couple of years?
Well, as far as sync goes, that is just a work in progress when you're working a lot remotely, because I'm not in a whole bunch of studios like that. When you work remotely, it's just getting people on board, and artists move at their own time. So I'm writing these songs, and we're collaborating, and it's just whenever they want to put it out, and then there's the matter of if you don't have the connections with the music supervisors, the sync agents, then that's another hurdle once you get the actual song done. So it's just been quite the process. No sync placements yet, but I'm connected with some pretty cool people. Actually, recently got connected in with Rico Love and a lot of creatives that work alongside Rico Love. For those of you that don't know, Rico Love is most famous for working with Usher and writing Sweet Dreams for Beyonce. That's probably his most notable piece of work that he's done. But just a lot of creatives that work alongside of him that are well connected in and that are just extremely talented. So I've been working a lot alongside that team. And just that's as far as like sync goes. Like I've got a couple projects that I'm working with that group of people. And as far as things that are different, dabbling into production, I just started producing a year ago. So that's been exciting. That's been quite the journey. It's come in like levels. Like at first, it was more cinematic themed, and I was into the more cinematic themed type of beats. And then I was like, well, let me try and make songs that actually are beats that actually sound like songs people could sing over or rap over. And then once I dove into that, I've gotten more people that are like, yo, let me sing over that, or let me buy that off you. So that's been a process all on its own. And artistry, as far as artistry goes, I actually released a single. The biggest accomplishment I've had, I worked with a guy by the name of Sequence Clark, and he got nominated for a Grammy for working on Eric Bellinger's project back in 2021. And he was featured on my project, so that was a big thing to have a Grammy nominee featured. And he was featured on my project. It wasn't like I was featured on his thing. He was featured on my song. I released that as more of a demo project. And I've released a couple of singles. I'm thinking of perhaps maybe releasing a single towards the end of this year or a music video, but that's all up in the air. And that's kind of been everything that I've been working on. I worked on a lot of marketing, pushing myself. I actually reached up to 100,000 views in 4 months, really pushing marketing. And that came from networking and reaching out to people. And so that's pretty much been a summary of the journey in the past 2 years.
Yeah, well, it's quite a lot, and I gotta say, congrats on all of it, first of all, because that's awesome stuff to be involved in for sure. And I definitely wanted to highlight a few of those points as well, starting with the production, because I had seen that you were posting, on your stories about making beats and doing those sorts of things. And how has that been up to this point? Like, do you feel like it's been coming along smoothly as far as the learning curve? And what are you using to make beats on? Like, what software? And what are your kind of your tricks so far for producing records? Like, do you start with melody? Do you start with drums? Just how has it been going overall?
So my approach towards beat making, I always have like an intro, and there might be like a sample in the beginning, and then I get into the melody, something that sounds maybe like a hook or something that sounds like a verse, and always add drums. Kind of like it adds more like a filler to it. I don't know why. It's like the intro, and then like add some sort of piano, keys, or some sort of melody, some sort of beat pattern, and then add drums. I'd say as far as the production goes, it's been a lot of like, I use BandLab, which is pretty standard for most like people who are using free software. I've been using BandLab and their sounds in their library. And the cool thing about BandLab is they're always adding new sounds. People are adding new packs every day from different genres. So like if I want to have a hip hop element to this R&B song, or if I wanted to have a lo-fi element to this R&B song, I can pull from these different packs and just mix and match. And I don't play any instruments, so it's been a lot of just putting sounds together and seeing what meshes well. And people say you can only do but so much with loops, but in the same spectrum of that, you can do but so much with loops, So it's been so much with just playing with the sound, seeing what goes together with the one shots, and just putting everything together and seeing what comes together. And it's been a progression, because at first it was just putting sounds together and just playing with it, and now it's more like, okay, how is this going to sound like a song?
Yeah.
So,
and it'll be awesome.
The process.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be awesome to see, because I feel like what you're making now and then what you'll make in like 5 years, you'll be able to look back and be like, wow, I've come so far, you know what I mean? Just by being able to stick with it and do that. So, I'm excited to hear, what you got moving forward too. And we've touched on BandLab in this show a few times. I know a good amount of people that use it. And I know people can use, like, you can use it on your phone even, because that's the way it's set up, where they have like the app where you can pretty much create on the go, iPad, phone, whatever you want to do. So I've heard that's very helpful to a lot of creatives, even singers too, because you can like record your ideas in the session. And if you want to re-record it later, you can, or you can just leave your takes and like export the files and all that stuff. So I've heard a lot of great things about BandLab. I've never tried it myself, but definitely worth looking into, especially if you're, looking to do these sorts of things and you want to like start producing, or you just want to put ideas down. So I think it's cool that you use that as well. because I definitely heard a lot of cool things about it. And the next thing that I want to dive into is the singles that you mentioned. You had a single called Hold Me and one called All Your Fault that came out. I believe, I don't know if they both came out this year. I think one came out at the end of last year, not sure. But let us know about, what went into creating those tracks and why you chose to release those when you did.
Okay, so All Your Fault was actually a demo, and it was just something I was putting together. I was heavily influenced by this artist by the name of Justin Love, and he is known for writing Focus by her, or co-writing that project. So I've been heavily influenced by him, been in contact with him. I actually want to have him as a feature on my EP, but that's further down the line. But I've already been in contact with him and his team. But yeah, that song was heavily influenced by him. It was actually pitched. I was gonna pitch it to him, but then everybody kept hearing it and was like, Giavonna, this sounds like you. Like, you should release this. And then the demo came out so good, so I released it. And when I was marketing and just pitching myself, reaching out to different countries and seeing where the most feedback came from just pushing myself, all over the world, doing covers and stuff, the most feedback I got was from Nigeria and just Africa, period. So that's where the Afro Mix came. And Afro Mix has been a hit. That's actually the one that's got 53,000 views within a year. And that's pretty good for an independent artist who's not that popular, who doesn't have that massive of a following. So that was a pretty big accomplishment for me. So the Afro Mix, that did really well. It's still doing well. So that's pretty much All Your Fault. So All Your Fault started as a demo, then we, transformed into me releasing my first ever single, and then it being released as the Afrobeat mix, and that's my highest streamed song out of all the songs I've released. And then after that, so that was released last year, around this summertime. And then I released Hold Me, which was with Sequence Clark. And Hold Me just came about. I was like, yo, I've got this guy. He wants to work with me. We've been in contact with each other. So I was in contact with Sequence. So we just always talked music. We were always talking music. He taught me about the industry because he's written for like K. Michelle, Eric Bellinger, Jacob Lattimore, T-Pain. He's written for all these different people, Kevin Gates. So he was just keeping me like in the loop of like what the industry is like. Just free game basically. And so he was like, hey, we should do a song together. So I reached out to one of my producer friends. I said, hey, this would be a dope opportunity for all of us if we, did a record with this guy. He's incredibly talented. I just think this would be great for all of us. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, give me a beat, make it simple, R&B, something smooth, short. Just, I don't want it to be too long, too flamboyant, just something short, sweet, and simple. So then that's how the instrumental for the original version of Hold Me came along. And then I actually heard Tony Romiti. I wanted to do a remix for it. And I heard Tony Romiti do a drill beat version of her R&B song. And that was the first time I heard an R&B song turn drill. And I was like, oh, snap. I got to do it. I've got to do it. So then I reached out to actually a producer in Nigeria. And I was like, hey, I know you do incredible work. I know you've been wanting to work with me. And he actually did the Afrobeat version of the All Your Fault. And so I reached out to him to do the remix for Hold Me, the drill beat version. And it came out so good. And I was like, gosh. And honestly, that hasn't got the attention that I thought it was going to get. Which I thought with drill being so popular, like in Europe and like New York, the northern states, really, I mean, it's really big everywhere, but really up north is where the most feedback, like Philadelphia, Chicago, that's where more of the targeted areas have been for the drill version of the song. Not so much UK, a little bit in the United Kingdom, but it's mainly been like Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York is where I've gotten most of the audience for that song. So there was that. And then just recently here in March, I released All Your Fault, the remix project. And I'm big on remixes because we got TikTok and you've got, just short form content. And they're always, doing these different versions of songs. So I did All Your Fault. I did a pop version. I did a reggae version. I did a house version, an EDM version, and a Jersey club version. And that's been doing really well. More people have gravitated towards the house and EDM version, which is, I guess, what I perceive is what's going to be popular is not necessarily what's going to, how people always say, like, well, I thought this was going to be the hit. And it turns out, like, it's something way, way off than what they thought.
Yeah.
So that's been what has happened with me, because I thought the Jersey Club version was going to be the pop. That's the one I enjoyed the most. That's one I thought everybody was going to gravitate towards. And it's been the house and EDM version. I'm like, you know what? Maybe y'all can have that. Yeah. But that's been the journey with the singles. I plan to push the house and the EDM versions more on TikTok. I know you've got like playlist push, where you can push it. You can have like, different influencers push your song. So I'm going to tap in with them. I actually had, there's one group in the UK. They're really popular. I want to say it's not playlist push, but I reached out to their team and they were like, yeah, we can do this. And then they wrote out the dollar amount. And I was like, oh, I'm an indie artist on a budget. It's quite expensive. But so I'm definitely going to reach out to a lot more of those platforms that have like a lot of the influencers on them and then push it that way.
Yeah.
That's going to be my goal for the next years to come. Just building my catalog, because you've got people that have put songs out 2-3 years ago and they didn't blow up. You had Under the Influence by Chris Brown, and that wasn't necessarily a remix version, but that was popping in Europe like 2 years later after it came out. So I'm just kind of like, here's my catalog. I have something, and I don't think this short form of dancing kind of, get the kids up and dance kind of movement is going to go away anytime soon. So as long as the kids are up and dancing, I have something for that for when the time comes when I get my budget together.
Hey there, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick minute out to let you know about a couple different ways that you can support the podcast. One of the ways is by clicking that support the podcast button within your streaming platform. That is if you want to be a monthly supporter of the show. You can contribute either 99 cents, $5, or $10 a month. So that's the first way, and that's the more traditional way that we've had now for the last couple years. The other method that we actually just recently introduced is from our good friends over at Ko-fi. Ko-fi is a virtual tip jar. We have set our limit to a minimum of $10, but you can go make one-time, one-off donations. So if you visit ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast, you'll be able to donate. And all these different forms of donation go towards getting new guests every single week, getting potential sponsors on board to do giveaways, and overall just making the show better for you guys. So if you want to do that Ko-fi link, it's ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Otherwise, again, look for that support the podcast button in your streaming platform if you'd like to be a monthly supporter. And I just want to say thank you guys for your contributions. And without further ado, let's get back into the episode. I love that. And it's basically a way to kind of repurpose the songs into different markets as well and reach those different audiences. And I remember I talked to my buddy Reese Woods, who's an R&B artist as well. He did something similar with his song that he dropped at the end of last year. He did like a chopped and screwed version. And it was kind of different because it was like R&B and like a Houston sound. That doesn't always, like, you don't think of those two things going together, but I thought that was like a genius thing to do. And it was kind of similar to that. It sounds like you took it even like further to the next level because you did so many different versions of it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of cool. And I like what you said too about you don't always know like which one's going to hit the most until it's out there. You know what I mean? And you won't know until you put these things out there. So I think it's great to do. And yeah, I agree. I think it's a great thing to to continue doing moving forward with like your next singles and things you do in the future, because I think the short form content, all that stuff is just going to keep being prevalent and just keep evolving. So to be able to have those different versions out there of these tracks is going to be it's going to be vital, I think. So I think that's awesome. And thank you for touching on that, because I think a lot of people probably take notes on that as well. And I know you said about marketing that you've been focusing on that a lot more recently. So where have you found the most success? Has it been like with social media ads or doing things with like Spotify for artists, or where do you think you found the most success? Or has it been doing the playlist pushing and all those platforms as well to kind of, expand your audience that way?
Well, I've been using two things. I used Omari MC, and he's a guy that's out in Atlanta. I've used a little bit of social media ads, like Instagram ads, but Instagram ads is not as lucrative as it was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, and the crazy part about Instagram ads, and I probably shouldn't be, this is just like a golden nugget, but with Instagram ads or even Facebook ads, it's like once you start using them, it makes it to where you have to continue to use them to have reach. It doesn't push you as organically as it would, and it does it on social, especially on Instagram. Not so much TikTok as much, but that organic reach, it's like once you start using the ads, it's like you got to keep using them. But essentially, that's what you would do anyway, because you've got like major corporations, like you've got Burger King and you've got McDonald's. When they run ads for like, it could be a seasonal product or something they're running for a year, and they put millions of dollars into running these ads for 6 to 7 months. So that's how I kind of think of it as, running these ads for, 2-3 months and just push it and get in front of as many eyes as possible, and then just target from there.
Yeah.
So I've also used like social media ads. So I've used like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Omari MC, which he helps with streams and stuff like that. He's very affordable for what he does. And there's a guy, Alex, Golden Money Marketing Team, that I've been using. And he does really well with just pushing. He's a promoter himself, so I just used him periodically throughout, just to help, boost streams, reach out to as many people as possible. So I've kind of done a little bit of everything as far as marketing goes. I'm just trying to reach as big of an audience as I can.
Yeah. And I feel like the biggest like part of that is like having a plan too. You know what I mean? Like when you figure out what you're trying to accomplish, and then you kind of get like the structure down and the plan in place, then it becomes a lot easier to make those decisions on where do you want to put like a certain amount of money into like an ad, or you want to work with an agency or whatever you want to do. And like, I think the best part about like being independent or being like at the beginning too, for a lot of people, would be you can like have trial and error with it. You don't always have to just do the same thing forever. You can try one thing, and if it doesn't work, you can switch to whatever else works and kind of pivot and just, see what that is for you. So I'm glad to hear that you're finding success with what you're doing and being able to push in that way too. And I know you've shouted out a lot of people already on this episode, but is there anybody else you want to give a shout out to, collaborator wise, anyone you've been in the studio with recently, or anything you're working on that you're excited to share that's going to be coming out soon?
I've got probably Markway Abyss. He's going to change his name. So that's the guy I've been working with. I've been in contact with since, 2021 maybe. So the past 3, maybe 2020. I want to say 2020. So it was a pandemic. We met over the pandemic. And he's been very instrumental in being like, this doesn't, just very, because he's a producer himself. He's actually about to release his first single. He's kind of like me, shying away from artistry, because artistry is more of a hobby for us. We're more like the producers, the writers. Like, we're like into that aspect of it. And so he's been very instrumental in the process. Markway, he's always critiquing my beats. So we're always, comparing different songs, being like, yo, how could we implement this into our music, or how could we write this better? He's always challenged. That's one thing he's always doing. He's always challenged me to write better. He's like, stay away from this or do this. So he's been very instrumental in the process along the way. As I mentioned, Sequence Clark, he's been very, very instrumental in the process. And as far as releasing new singles, I'm possibly releasing a music video at the end of this year. Maybe an EP in 2025. It may come at the end of this year, but that's all I really have planned. I didn't really have plans for releasing any more music. Like I said, that process is super tedious, and it's just not been something that like I said, artistry is like, you got to have the photo shoots, and I haven't even dove into, I haven't been extremely serious about it. It's just more so like, this is for the friends and family. If you want to listen to it, you want to listen to it. And then of course, pushing it and marketing it and building building your brand that way. But it's the artistry side has been more like, this is just something I like to sing. Yeah. So I want to release stuff. This is just something for the friends and family to listen to and get feedback from. And it's been pretty positive. So that's kind of like where the artistry is. Yeah. And then obviously I want to get Justin Love on the project. Oh, and I'll do a little bit of rapping. Don't worry, it's not too heavy. But I can rap a little bit. But it's just this EP is just mainly to focus on my creative juices. Like, I'm producing on it. I've got some of my production on this project. So it's just mainly me just having fun and just releasing something. And it's actually going to be my last secular sort of project. Because, like Tori Kelly, she's got where she does her Christian stuff and she does her secular stuff. And my music is always clean. I don't want it to talk bad about anybody. Although All Your Fault, you could say, it was kind of like men bashing women empowerment. But I didn't think of it. It wasn't solely that. It wasn't that bad. I don't want to bash anyone in any way. It was more so like a teaching aspect from it. And so I want to release more Christian tailored music here to come in the future. I'm not saying that it's my last like secular project, but I'm adding more Christian elements to my music as the time goes on. So that's where I'm headed.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely excited for all of that for sure. And I think what's cool for you about being a songwriter is that even when, if you want to aim like your artistry in a certain way, you'll always be able to songwrite in other ways for other artists too. So I think the possibilities are always endless for that as well. So yeah, like I said, I'm thrilled to hear what you're going to be working on coming up, and I think other people are going to be on the lookout for it as well. So that's very exciting, and we're almost at the end here. So is there anything you want to add? Any words of wisdom for anyone today before we wrap up?
I would just say keep going. Like, music is a never-ending journey, a never-ending process. So just don't give up. Keep going. It doesn't matter how old you are, where you are as far as, like, your level of where you are. Just as long as you keep building. And you might get stuck in a place for a while. Like, my songwriting, like, I was writing the same song over and over and over, and it wasn't changing. And then I had to start, listening to different artists, like even jazz artists, like, just listening to different artists, country artists, because most of what I write is R&B and pop. So I just dive in. You just really have to do a dive in and just keep going and dive into the artistry, be well studied. If you want to learn how to mix, there's all these different things out there. I've actually dabbled into mixing. I'm not best at it, but I'm okay. I've dabbled into using the different presets on your voices. And it's just a never-ending process. To me, it's just so fun to really just dive into everything and see what all's out there, see what all I can do for my vocals, see how well I can write this song, or how well I can write over this beat, or what I can write over this beat, or how I can tackle a topic over a certain beat, whether it's my beat or it's something off of BeatStars or off of YouTube. If I'm just practicing, So I would just say the biggest thing is just keep going, never stop.
Yeah. Creativity is really boundless, and like you said, it never ends. So always just got to keep learning and keep growing. And well, Giavonna, I got to say, thank you again for joining me. I'm always happy to touch base. I know we talk here and there on Instagram, but it's always good to touch base in this way. And yeah, if you ever want to come back on the show again, let me know. But congrats on everything you're doing, and thanks again.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You have a good one.
Thanks, everyone, for listening today. That was episode 222. We'll be back this time next week. As always, hit that support button on your podcast streaming platform if you'd like to send any funds, and feel free to leave us that 5-star rating if you enjoyed today's episode. So we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.